chair, alongside my selection committee members, I've had the great privilege of reading the inspirational stories of many who stood up to societies around the world and demonstrated that one individual's action can have a lasting impact. The Aurora Prize does a very unique thing. It brings awareness to the many selfless individuals who are facing their own humanitarian challenges on a daily basis and are determined to support others despite their difficult circumstances. The prize empowers modern-day heroes who offer life and hope to those in urgent need. Aurora is about building a broader humanitarian movement, maintaining the cycle of giving, and is focused on gratitude in action. By bringing these traditions online today, we are adopting our current situation, bringing people together, remembering the kindness of humanity, and celebrating the work of these heroes.
Thank you, Lord Darcy. I would now like to give you the floor as the chair of the Aurora Prize Selection Committee to introduce the names of the 2020 Aurora humanitarians and their designated organizations.
Thank you. I seem to have lost you for a second. Thank you very much, Nicola. It's a great honor, privilege, and delight that this year, on a year we receive, this year specifically, which has been a year that we've received more applications than any, which is a great testament to the growth of this unique humanitarian movement. We've been fortunate enough to receive hundreds of submissions, nearly 593 of unique candidates. And I promise everyone listening, every one of them had something very special who have contributed to humanitarian causes, which makes it very difficult to decide or at least select from this incredible group of people. But after serious deliberation, we were delighted to announce that we have selected 4 finalists who have each chosen organizations that they would wish to give their prize money to, very much in keeping with the Aurora's cycle of giving. And they are Fartum Adan and Ilwad Elman for striving to bring peace in Somalia. Their work centered on providing innovative, life-saving support to those in need and has benefited hundreds of people. Their designated organizations are Love Does, Pansy Foundation, and Prajalya India. Sister Angelique Nameka for helping displaced people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the last decade, no less than 22,500 women received support in the Center for Reintegration and Development created by Sister Angelique. Her designated organizations are Invisible Children and Caritas. Next is Sophie Bow and Klaus Vogel for rescuing refugees in the Mediterranean. To date, their organization, SOS Méditerranée, has helped more than 30,000 refugees. Their designated organization is SOS Méditerranée. Finally, Sakina Yacoubi for providing education to women and girls in Afghanistan and Pakistan, founder of the Afghan Institute of Learning. She has impacted 16 million Afghans. Her dedicated organizations are the Afghan Institute of Learning, Creating Hope, and Women's Refugee Commission. A huge congratulations for these 4 remarkable individuals. And we will now watch a short film of their work. Thank you.
On behalf of the whole Avrora team, we congratulate the 2020 Aurora humanitarians. And we know some of them are following our online event right now. But we also would like to thank Lord Darcy and all the members of the selection committee for their commitment and for their valuable work. We know also that some of them are joining us today on this event. Lord Darcy, my last question to you for the moment. Aurora is continuing its work beyond 2020, is that correct?
That is correct, Nicola. And more than any other time, its role will continue to search for these unsung heroes that we've just witnessed and to give them acknowledgement that they deserve. With that, we're delighted today to officially announce the opening of the nomination period for the 2021 Aurora Prize. I'm sure everyone listening will agree there's never been a better time for the world to get together and honor those risking to help others. We are calling for nomination of inspiring humanitarians who go to extreme lengths to save lives of others, including those fighting the global outbreak of COVID-19. As an Armenian, and most of us listening to this, healthcare and education are the two things which are absolutely critical when it comes to any humanitarian crises. Aurora has a very strong tradition of recognizing the impact globally of healthcare workers such as Dr. Katina and Dr. Mukherjee, both remarkable individuals in their own rights. This year, there will be millions of healthcare heroes around the world. And in advance, I want to recognize all of them and say the world is grateful for their tireless work and self-sacrifice and showing the best of humanity. This is also the moment to note those healthcare workers who have lost so far in this tragic journey, and the many that we will be losing in the coming months. However, it's not just healthcare workers who are the heroes. We have to acknowledge the suffering and the anxiety caused by coronaviruses on key workers, volunteers, social workers across the globe, who have shown a tremendous amount of courage, resilience in helping some of the most vulnerable. From keeping people supplied with basic needs during the lockdown, to helping the elderly and the confused protect themselves, there are many stories of heroism during this crisis. Communities and generations are coming together like never before and must continue to do so to get us all through this crisis in solidarity. In honor of COVID-19 heroes, a separate and a shorter nomination form will be available online to nominate them for their courageous work. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Darcy. Yes, you mentioned the topic. The world is in shock and disruption through this crisis. And that is why, Maggie, if I turn to you in Rwanda, maybe you can just give us an update. How is the situation in Rwanda? And more importantly, how is the situation in Maison Shalom? Maggie, you have to unmute.
I'm sorry. Yeah. For this moment, with this pandemic moment, the government of Rwanda helped since 1 month. We are in a lockdown. We don't have so many, we are lucky, so many people. We have only 155 affected. Already 87, they are now healed, and we have only 7 people who are ill in hospital. But you understand, a poor country with many refugees, the problem for this moment is urban refugees who lost their jobs. Then they need to be helped. Then Maison Shalom tried, and the government of Rwanda tried also to help. And today we help only 2 days. We give food to 700 people and 240 families in urban refugees. It's what we can do, but we know that love makes us inventor. We will be together, and together we can make the impossible possible.
Thank you, Maggie, for this picture, and let's hope that you all come through the crisis unharmed. You just mentioned love, and I found a very nice quote from you that I would like to say. You said, gratitude in action can change also the crime into life, the hatred into love, and the indifference into compassion. Now, how could that be applied in these difficult times? What would you say?
I think that if we stand up together, there are doctors, there are many scientists, and there are so many people, and we can share. We can break this indifference and create compassion. I know that together we will change. Look to Aurora Prize. Aurora Prize creates brotherhood between people who had lost so much in the war, in poverty, in hatred. If all those survivors can say, okay, now I can give back for others, we can also give back. I wish to say to those people who listen to me that don't be so stupid. Be together, because we are one human family. When we give, we become happier than to those that we give. And then for me, I believe that we can, for today, and say that coronavirus will not win. We know, we have experience with Spain in 1918. We can come over. Then for me, I give the experience how even in refugee camp, when I got this Aurora Prize with the money, my life changed completely. I didn't become beneficiary. I give back to those foundations. And then those foundations give back to the refugees. Now the refugee camp became a city. All those students who finished now because of scholarship, now they give back. They are helping the people in agriculture. They give those who finish in English, they give now English training. And the refugee camp became a paradise because everybody stood up. I believe I can say that all those people with Aurora Prize, the most important it's give. It's not about money. It's about the impact. We change completely the mindset in the world. We became brother and sister. We changed the world. Thank you, because thanks to Aurora Prize, now the world can say we are one human family.
Thank you, Maggie. I think that was a perfect description of the philosophy, gratitude in action that you just gave us. Nubar, years ago, you once said something like, Aurora was really founded on the premise that there are people who are risking their lives to save thousands of others in the worst of humanitarian crisis. And this quote sounds incredibly true today in today's context. And I would like to ask you maybe to go a bit more into this from your perspective.
Thank you, Nicola, and thank you, dear family, friends all around the world. It is indeed both a pleasure, honor, and also a difficult moment for us to be isolated the way we are on the 105th anniversary of or commemoration of the Armenian genocide, when at that time Armenians became extremely isolated as well from each other in the world. What happened 105 years ago that later became characterized as a genocide, the mass atrocity, was a man-made event. And that event thrust the Armenian people for the century to follow in a search for justice, for understanding, for recovery, for strength, and for a place in the world, a new place in the world, and a voice. At the centennial 5 years ago, the Aurora Prize in Humanitarian Initiative was launched to get a better understanding of what happened. And in doing so, we realized that in addition to the victims and the criminals, there were also at that point survivors and saviors who were born. And the human spirit that motivates people to save others is one that very few of us have experienced, but many Armenians, are the beneficiaries of. And as we looked into that concept, we realized that to honor those saviors, we needed to do nothing more than to find modern day saviors. And that's what launched the spirit of Aurora. Now, we're living at a time when that same spirit is being thrust upon all of the world. There are modern day saviors in every community, and there are survivors who can't understand why this is happening with the virus and the senselessness and the despair that Armenians felt 105 years ago. And so while I don't want to create an association between what we're living in the world and what happened to Armenians, I can't but point out that while the perpetrator is different, the effect is much the same, and the scale is now global. And the reason I bring that out is because our mission of bringing the world's attention and humanitarian aid to these situations is particularly appropriate and should be understandable in every family, in every corner, given what's happening. We talk about gratitude in action. It can't but be that when one's life is saved, they are filled for generations with a sense of gratitude. And we live at a time when that gratitude can be expressed in humanitarian actions, in helping others everywhere. So while last year, a lot of you watched Aurora and thought, well, it's good that people are doing this, we support them. And of course, we're so far from the places where these actions are being taken, but we appreciate meeting the people, hearing their stories. Well, for everybody that's listening, you can be a humanitarian today because the need is there right around the corner. So sorry that I'm a little bit moved by this, but I think the message is that the spirit of gratitude can be as much of an infection as a virus. It's an infection for good, not an infection for bad. And that's the message that we really want to bring to the world. So in deciding to go forward with the event today, it was a sense of responsibility that we are commemorating something that is being in part relived, and we ought to be the voice that brings this to the world's attention.
Thank you, Nubar, for these very moving words. And I'm really sorry if I change again now to the virus. You mentioned it, it's tough times, and we all have a chance to do our part. There are a lot of eyes on you these days, Nubar, because in this crisis, there is also hope. And one of this is the promising process of developing a vaccine against the coronavirus. And that is happening through one of your companies, that is Moderna Therapeutics. And I know that I'm asking this because I know a lot of people ask themselves, and the news is full of it. The question is, developing and successfully testing a vaccine is one thing, but let's say, how long would it go until a country like Armenia would have access to a vaccine in these days, in this crisis?
Well, Nicola, the topic of developing, whether it's better tests, better treatments, and better vaccines or vaccines for this disease, is one that is consuming scientists all over the world, tens of thousands of them. And while they may not be able to care for patients, they are caring for the future patients by enabling the technologies that we so desperately need. I have described what's going on today as essentially a biological battle between the social nature of human beings and the invasive nature of a virus that transmits itself exactly because of our social nature. And this is kind of a fairly, it's certainly precedented, but it's unprecedented in our modern time, certainly in the last century, in its scale. And because we have so much more mobility, we have to defend ourselves with better and better technology. The isolation we're all feeling is a first step, but of course the whole world is working on and hoping that a vaccine or multiple vaccines can be developed, and we have the burden and opportunity to be one of the companies that is working on this. There's a lot of uncertainty. This is no different than the kind of aid that is needed, for example, to be brought to bear on refugee crises. People do whatever they can to help the situation, and in this case, it's science that tries to help. In terms of countries like Armenia, I can tell you that the effort that is underway is meant to be addressing the whole world. It is the case that we live in an uncomfortably nationalistic time, and various countries, especially powerful ones, seem to be more interested in defending their own interests than the whole world. But in the end, I'm quite sure that the population around the world will demand solutions that are available to everybody on the planet. I think this whole crisis will bring people together, remind people why we need institutions that are global institutions that came about in the last century that seem to be weakening. And it will be the responsibility of international institutions such as World Health Organization, such as the Gates Foundation for certain countries, CEPI, which is a big vaccine alliance. We are certainly, as are others, working with all of them to make sure that vaccines reach every country. And of course, since we are Armenians, Armenia is a beneficiary of that as well. And so this is an international crisis. It needs international solutions. And I think people should realize that we do have, as humans, the capacity, the finances, and we're going to have to help each other make it through this uncertain period until we can recover. And then, as Ara said very eloquently earlier, we have to pledge not to have this happen again. And these kinds of catastrophes are in fact avoidable. This may not be man-made, but it doesn't make it unavoidable. We can avoid these things, we can prevent these things, and I very much, coming out of this, and many colleagues are committed to taking a pledge of never again, just like these pledges were taken post the Holocaust, post the genocide, unfortunately, not as effectively as we would like history to record, but nevertheless, we'd really have to do that for this type of a crisis as well.
Thank you, Nubar, for this cautious assessment on the vaccine question. I would like, after this topic of COVID and crisis and Corona, I would like to come back to today, to the 24th of April. It is a sad day. It is a day full of remembrance and mourning. And we titled this discussion, Aurora Standing in Solidarity. And Ruben, I would like to ask you, what does this mean to you?
Thank you, Nicola. Good evening, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. I think it's very symbolic, but my image is not very visible. The back of the Magdalena, who is much more important compared to me, and I will say it's showing how generations will pass away, but some of the key legacies will stay for all of us. And I think that what we're memorizing today, it's critical not only for Armenians, but also for the world. And I think it's critical what we are facing now, the new challenge, which Nubar touched, it's a key issue about the human values, how you behave in your family, what will your response. I think we're facing unique situation when we are remembering the people who've been killed or died 105 years ago, but at the same time we're paying tribute to the people who today continue living on behalf of his grandparents, and we are, I think, sending the main message which we've been developing at Nubar many years ago. Be Armenian, be alive. And I think it's be alive, staying human, keeping the key human values, and looking forward, remembering your past. I think the key message is, but we need to know the history of all our human, being always a lot of tragedies and a lot of things happen in the history of any nation. But I think the key point is stay human and looking forward and remembering your descendants, but trying to live a better future for your kids.
Thank you, Ruben. That is already taking my next question in a way, because on one side we are have a 5th anniversary celebrating 5 years of Aurora. And when we are looking back, we have incredible stories. We have inspiring modern day heroes. But I also wanted to look ahead and ask you actually about your vision for the future. And I mean now, not so much Aurora, but I mean the future of Armenia. Maybe you can add a few words on that.
I'm happy to say our main answer to our enemies and our friends who've been helping us, what we can do, not only remember, but become strong, successful, and happy nation. And I believe this will be best what we can do against the always type of the declining or rejecting the story what happened 105 years ago. Our main answer to this will be, we will be best, successful, happy nation who will really help others and contribute to the world, doing something important to make the world better. So what we're trying to do in Armenia, and we're trying to show, is like example to other countries, especially the small countries, but you can develop yourself despite not being very rich, using your talents inside of the country and outside of the country. You can really do something that people will be proud of being recognized like Armenian, not only because of history of Tigran the Great or some other great people who've been in our history, but because of the current Armenia is really becoming attractive and really creating the absolutely unique example of success of people doing their own future, building their own future, and using the network of the diaspora, the network of people who in friends of Armenians, and not doing for ourselves, but also doing for the world. I think it's one of the best way to build our future, be part of the world, at the same time keep our identity, keep who we are, remembering who we are, but at the same time being part of the global movement who trying to make this world better. And so I was trying to do in our projects in Armenia with last 20 years. This year we're also celebrating Armenia 2020 project, which was been started with me and many our friends and our families 20 years ago when we started to think about future of Armenia. And I'm happy to see a lot of things have been achieved, a lot of things been not achieved, but we've been doing it with our friends and partners. And I would say thank you all our colleagues and partners support our projects, and we can see something which we've been doing. It's giving some results back to the Armenia and also to the world. And I hope this is the best example to building future, knowing your past and relying on your past.
Thank you, Ruben. We actually have time now for questions, to answer questions. And I would like, Ruben, just to add a question that came in and that is fitting perfectly to what you just said. The question is, as a philanthropist and an entrepreneur, what changes do you think we'll see in the field of humanitarian work after the COVID-19 pandemic is under control? And of course, also the other panelists might answer, but I think, Ruben, you have your thoughts on this.
I think the pandemic crisis creates some new reality, which we need to all accept. It's not only a question how long we will stay in quarantine, how long we will stay in isolation. And by the way, this is a unique situation, but in one hand, we all locked down in our own flats and homes and basically isolated very, very locally. In other hand, we're very globally connected, which means we are depending on what's happening in the world. We are looking what's happening in the United States, what's happening in China. It's showing how, despite we're locally, or we are global, part of the global picture. I think one thing the pandemic will create is the changes of offline, online proportion of our life. It will change our behavior, it will change our culture, it will change our economic and financial situation, but it also will create a lot of opportunities, because this new reality will more and more show with the humans becoming the main driver of transformation of the world. We'll need to have a good ecosystem where we're not only getting good compensation or good some real estate or cars, but also we have a good system of the neighbors, of families. I think we are going back to some of the key points which we maybe last for 50, 70 years doing less attention. It's not just earning money, but also being happy, because we're staying now with our families, and it's interesting to see how surprisingly we're facing the new reality, but we're spending more time with our family members. We're spending more time with our neighbors because we're relying on them. I think it's a good example of the, in one hand, see the technology transformation of the life around us, and at the same time, going back to the key human values, key human behavior, and key element, which also we're facing in the hospitals when you need to make a tough decision about whom you will save and how you make this decision, who will make this decision. And I think it's our dependability from the system, or whatever we name it, at state will become, in one hand, more, and will be more and more dependent. System will provide us some security and safety. At the same time, we'll be more and more reliant to our own independence and our own decisions and our own responsibilities for our own personal life. That's why we'll have a more extreme online, offline, and combination of these two elements. We'll have a more extreme of the state controlling and regulating us. At the same time, our own life responsibility will be under our head. I think we'll be more looking about technology transformation, and same time going back to human values and basics, which was being developed thousands of years ago. So I think we have a unique time when this extreme element, which nobody see it, can be combined and become more important and will be merged together, which will be, we will see the new reality. I think it will be unique for all our kids, and I hope we can learn the lessons. I hope we can learn how we can handle this stuff with the tough questions together, because what I believe, only together, only talking to each other, only spending time together, only sharing experience and pain and everything what you learn others to get something to find solution, we can go together. I think it's illusion with somebody sitting somewhere can make the decision for us and help us. I think it's gone, and it will help people to realize what we need to be more proactive, building our own future, our family's future, or our nation's future.
Thank
Nicola,
you, Ruben.
Nicola, if I can
please.
just add something to what Ruben just said, maybe I can give you a slightly kind of complementary perspective about, I think, what might change, not just in the humanitarian philanthropy world, but that nexus, but in general. And I think that what we're experiencing now will bring humanity back to one of its core capabilities, which is to adapt and to migrate. You know, most of us Armenians have had the experience of forced migration, and we continue to migrate. We're all over the world. And we're seeing 100 million plus people in the world today that are refugees that have been forced to migrate. But people attribute something bad to that. But ironically, when people are taken out of their comfort zone and they are made to really think about what matters and how to survive and how to do things that allow them to eventually thrive, I think it actually is what causes big changes. And so I think globally, we are all refugees today. We are refugees from the normal before the pandemic to the normal that either awaits us or that we construct. And I think that what you see already is lots of people who are proposing new ideas, new things that would never have been thought of, but now are needed and are practical to think about. And that's one of the few, perhaps, advantages of the displacement that such an event causes. So I know through my other relationships and roles, and I'm sure everybody else here does, and they may want to comment, that very large international institutions like MIT, globally renowned symphony orchestras like the Boston Symphony, I have those 2 points of kind of reference, are absolutely thinking about how to redefine themselves in the world we're about to enter, despite all the uncertainty. And I think that Armenia and Armenians also have to think about what's the meaning of the life that they're living, what's the life they want to live, and of course they need help and support and financial stability. But in the end, I really look forward to the decades that my children live as being one full of transformations and changes that in the world we were living in the last decades, I think would have been impossible, particularly because the world order had become rigid, the status quo was governing, and everybody basically felt that nothing they did could ever make a difference. If ever that wasn't true in the last 100 years, I think this is one such moment.
I'm not sure, Vartan, you wanted to add something? Or
I think
yeah.
Nubar and Ruben make very important point. Martin Luther King said once, civil rights leader in the United States, we came in different ships, now we're in the same boat. And we're realizing these events more than ever, how intertwined, how integrated we are as a humanity. It's forced us to think as one, even though different solutions will be found, nationalistic and others still. But more than ever, I think, it's shown that plagues have no borders. Plagues do not recognize, don't discriminate on the basis of ethnicity, race, or color, or region. And it forces humanity to think as one, that as human beings, what can we do to prevent, to preserve, as well as preserve? And more than ever, I think the Aurora idea that my two colleagues, Ruben and Nubar, started, is indicating now the need of association of auroras around the world in order to mine what's the best in us in order to bring out there. Because we have, and we'll discuss later, maybe we have heroes and others in every area, but when decency, morality, ethics always was shunted aside and people behaved in disbelief about the authenticity of those feelings and those ideas, now everybody's forced to deal, what's ethical, what's moral, what's long range, what's good. not what's expedient alone. And therefore, I think ÜİHR is right there.
Now, I would say maybe Nubar and Ruben, you shared probably an optimistic view that you say there is we have a chance that there is something really good coming out of this crisis. But of course, there are also skeptics and who say as soon as we are back to normal, everything will be forgotten. I have one question, maybe Lord Darcy, that is interesting for you, asking, now more than ever, the focus of the world is on the healthcare workers. How will this affect the way we treat them in the future? What would you say, Lord Darcy?
Thank you. I suspect we know how to protect them at the moment, which is called the personal protection equipment. And sadly, in many health systems, that's been a difficult challenge. We've had a huge spike in demand, and there were very few global suppliers. So there's been, sadly, a lot of protectionism in terms of the not necessarily sharing some of these equipment, which is absolutely critical to protect the staff. I will look at this slightly differently. It's not the staff. This country has lost very large number of citizens, which is very traumatic to all of us who work in the healthcare system. I think there's a big lesson to be learned from this. Although we have been speaking about pandemics, I think the preparation to pandemics globally demonstrated the weaknesses across the system. I might just attribute some of the work that Nubar has done in this field in terms of being the first to launch a vaccine for COVID. So we need organizations like Flagship and Moderna who really been well ahead of their time in terms of research and development. But as Nubar will also say, we need a mindset change. We need a mindset change. As an article he published recently in the Boston Globe, we need to think about health as one of our securities. And health security is something that we all need to think through once the COVID postmortem has happened. We need to be much better equipped. We need to be much readier in terms of therapeutics, vaccines. And we also need to develop technologies that will protect us from such virus, or at least a virus turning into a pandemic as it happened in this situation. So there are many, many lessons to be learned, but the most important one, back to your question, is what could we do to our staff? We do know what we need to do to our staff. I think it's quite important that, again, from a security perspective, that we have the personal protection equipment available at every country in case of an emergency like this.
I think, if I might add, the question goes also into the direction of will we acknowledge the role of caregivers overall more after this crisis? It has a lot been said and written that it's mostly women. So all of a sudden, you know, the kindergartens were system relevant, and the schools, and of course in the hospitals. Will that be sustainable? What do you think? This feeling of gratitude towards this staff? Yeah,
well, caregivers, let me start. There are very large groups of people who provide care in the community. I'll start by acknowledging first the lack of support that we've seen, at least to the staff in social care, in nursing home, in care homes. Europe certainly has been hit very badly with this, as you will know, in terms of the isolating people in nursing homes, the ability to test for infections in nursing homes, the ability to protect staff working in nursing homes was another serious issue. We've lost a significant number of staff working in care homes, which is a serious issue. So yes, there's been a lack of confidence, as we've seen in some European cities, like certainly in Spain, where people just left the nursing home and many of the elderly were left alone in many of these care homes. So we're just seeing the opposite of what Aurora stands for. So, but these things do happen if there are serious concerns and grave concerns. So I think our approach to community, societal level approach to community will have to change, whether it's a care home, whether it's a school. On the other hand, we've also seen a huge amount of coherence in which different groups in the community have come together to support each other. That's the positive, that's the other side of the coin, the positive aspects of the threat of COVID has brought to us at a street level, door-to-door level, people checking on their neighbors, people supporting their neighbors, supporting their community, people out there going and doing your shopping for you, people out there purely picking up the phone and calling you once a day. So it has also brought the best in humanity. But this is a tragic set of events. We will get through this. We will hopefully be stronger. We will hopefully learn from this and have the right defenses in meeting some of these challenges.
Thank you, Lord Darcy. If there is no other comment on this, I would go maybe to another question. Ruben, yes?
I think what we will face, I think it's very important to going back to the respect to main profession, teacher, doctor. I think it's one of the things that's happened last 40, 50 years. This consuming-based society and the money-driven society, when everybody was talking about market capitalization, the profitability, I think the nature is showing us what it's important of is much less compared we thought before. And many people now facing serious existential crisis about what we will do, how we will live, what is the main criteria of success. So I'll say, I hope this crisis will help us to go back to the basic and understand that the professions which have been less treated, not fair treated last 30 years, I think will need to come back, not because of the high compensation, but because of importance of what they've been doing and doing thousands of years. That's why I hope we will learn the lessons. We will not forget immediately after the virus will be gone. And we'll learn what the lessons will be, what we need to go back to normal society, where is the key professions, scientists, doctors, culture leaders. It's all important, and just money is not can be everything for all of us. And I say it's an instinct the way we can talk about not about will we face the socialism or we will get the end of the capitalism, but we will need to change the system and make more balance between the money-driven, consuming-based society to the value-driven, learning-based, creative society.
Thank you, Ruben. I have another question. It's a big question. I'm not sure who would go after it, but there is someone asking from an educator's perspective, why has the history of humanity seen so much violence and hatred despite them bringing no solutions? And what can be done to change that? How could solidarity be demonstrated in everyday life? Who would volunteer?
Margaret, I think the best example of showing what it means for real day-by-day life. She was best example for all of us. Margaret, we all love you. I love you.
I think that it's possible if everybody, each of us said, I belong to this big family, human being family, and say, if they kill a child in Syria, even I am in Rwanda, it's my child that they kill. And the system, the whole system, I think, UN organization, they must think that they can't be just in indifference and spend money in stupid things. Why they kill each other? I know in my country, I suffer with the war. It's not because ethnic group, it's because of poverty. And in the country where everything can grow, it's fertile. Why? We must have another mindset in education. Like I can say Mandela had said, if we want to change the world, then we put the money in education. If we educate people, then we will change the world in paradise. It's because of those people who are not educated with human values, compassion, integrity, and also because there is richness, enough richness to feed everybody. It's not because of poverty. It's because we spend money in stupid things.
Yes, thank you, Maggie. Any other comments on that? I have then maybe, if I look at maybe a last question that I would like to ask all of you. The question, what is the biggest lesson of your life, particularly in the current situation? What is the biggest lesson that you personally learned during the last weeks, months?
Well, maybe I'm happy to jump in because this is one of the things we've talked about many times in the past, and I want to just bring to this discussion, maybe not as much of a lesson as just an observation, is that and the question that was just asked that Maggie offered some thoughts on also speaks to this. It may be part of the human condition that through competition, through discord, through many other forces, we are constantly being forced to survive and being forced to kind of become reborn. And I say that because, I'm standing in front of or pictured in front of the symbolic Mount Ararat, which really represents the whole historic sense of second chance. It seems like our lives are made up of moments, it's not a continuity, but moments that bring us close to one or another form of survival. And the question becomes, what do you do with the second chance? Some people lose their meaning of life when they are surviving because they become completely destabilized. But other people fill that void with a new meaning of their life. And I think that, we've talked many times about the Armenian experience, one of going from surviving to reviving to thriving. And this, there's hours and hours of our talks over the years. And boy, did we not think that notion would be applicable to the world today. I say that in the sense that as we are going through the current crisis, the world is very much in survival mode. There are some people who hope it goes back to the way it was before. But there are other people who realize that we're going to enter a phase of reviving. And by reviving, I mean to recreate the life we want to have, to recover. And Armenians went through that after the genocide for decades and decades. We were revived all over the world. People took us into their countries. We learned their languages, their cultures. We competed. We helped their countries. And that revival period will be the case in my view. And out of that will come new art forms, new science, new education, new lots of things. But I want to just say that to me, the observation is just how often in history we end up through survival moments, entering this journey of revival, redefining our future. And then all that takes us to where we thrive. And somehow, some way, it seems that when we thrive for a period of time, survival becomes knocking on our door. And the question becomes, what do we do with that? And I think we're at such a moment now. So we have the ideological template. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be a lot of collaboration. But I feel like this is part of almost this, people call it, renewal gives it a positive image. I don't mean that way. It's got a lot of death associated with it, or or struggling and suffering, but we are at one such moment. That would be my observation of the moment.
Thank you, Nubar, for these thoughts on a very actually difficult question. Anybody else about this topic, the biggest lesson, adding to what Nubar said? Yes, Vartan, please.
I think we lack introspection, and this pandemic has forced us to be examining our lives. As Ruben mentioned, where are we? What are we doing? Why are we doing what we do? What for? What are our values? What are our and I came to the conclusion that's very healthy once in a while to reevaluate one's life, forced to reevaluate. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. And I came to another conclusion that we are not only vulnerable, but religion has failed us, all countries. Previous question that was asked, because they're not teaching what unites us, they're teaching what divides us. As I used to say, I've attended many interfaith meetings, and the issue always is this: rather we both serve the Lord, you in your way and I in his. The moment all of us have to say, we all say with his, then we'll be all right. But the ideologies and others divide without realizing consequences of those divisions. So opponents become enemies become categories. And the moment you categorize people, they become aesthetic politics, aesthetic design. You can move them around, shuffle them around, not to a perfect world on the map without knowing consequence of it. And I think, education is the key, but don't forget, Nazi Germany was very well-educated society, had more PhDs and others, not Germany. So education alone is not enough. Morality, ethics, and introspection are also very important for people to know the issues, to transcend them, to debate them, but not categorize them, because that's what Nazis did. They categorized for the first time people. They were problems, people were problems. They were not necessarily solutions. And that's why we have to watch out. So introspection is great, but also knowledge without introspection is empty. So we have also to provide knowledge, a ground for introspection, not speculation on hazardous, the way people do. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you very much, Vartan. I have a look at the time and we have to wrap up our discussion. We started our talk with Vartan's thoughts about survival and the responsibility that comes with it. We touched upon a lot of big thoughts about solidarity and love, the gratitude that should grow out of any humanitarian crisis, human values, human spirit. And last but not least, we honored the heroism of our 2020 Aurora humanitarians, but also of the many unsung heroes of the COVID-19 crisis. In closing this discussion, I would like to quote another saying of Vartan. Vartan, you said, "I did not know there were so many who qualified to receive the Aurora Prize. And the pity is we only have one prize to give." And Vartan, if you allow, this reminds me a bit of a saying in Galileo, Bertolt Brecht's play, who says, "Curse me the land that needs heroes." And then his pupil, Andrea, says, "Bless the land that needs heroes."
Yes.
Vartan.
Yeah, that was my quote also, quoting Galileo, Brecht and Galileo. When I was in elementary school in Tabriz, Iran, I went to Armenian school when there was Soviet education. The class, the elementary school, there was a line, there was fire, and this person goes, puts out the fire. The reporters say, what's your name? He said, just tell a Soviet citizen. Namely, it's normal to do it. You don't do it for publicity. So the Brecht's Galileo line reinforced that feeling. So cursed be the land that needs heroes, because we're so debased, so immoral, so evil that we need heroes in order to redeem us or justify us. Hero becomes a kind of ornamental justification, so forth. So I, mindful of that, I would say blessed are the lands that need that have heroes, because they not only reminds us what's good, but they practice actually what's good. They're not preaching, but they're practicing. And that's what Aurora comes, in my opinion. This Aurora is practicing gratitude. It's gratitude in action. It's not talking, because talk is cheap without action. And in my hope that Aurora will be an example to emulate around the world, to bring the unknown. People are not doing things in order to be honored. They're doing things because it's the right thing to do. So it's a decent thing to do. It's humane thing to do, human thing to do. It's the just thing to do. And without that kind of moral solidarity that ties our societies together, we'll have always conflict, we'll always have distrust, we'll always be cynical. And I always tell my students in the past, it's all right to be cynic after you're disillusioned and idealist, but don't try to cut the phase of disillusionment by ideal. First become idealist, get disillusioned with cynic. Rather straightforward, check cynicism as the best way of protecting yourself, because you have not believing in anybody, anything, and so forth, except your interests. So I am very hopeful that Aurora's example already will bring out, or my only regret is, as you read, we do not have many heroes now that nobody knows we have. Real heroes, not seasonal heroes like athletes, and are real heroes who endure and provide role model for our many children and those families. It's my hope that Aurora will be emulated, forming an association of Auroras in the world in order to bring the best in us, which is hidden, in order to provide role model and inspiration, and also hope for humanity's future. That we're not merely consumers, entertainment units and sales units, but we're also spiritual beings, rational beings with aspirations, dreams, and other things to be and to become and to do. And that's my hope will be about Aurora, that this example will be copied. And also Aurora is a great tribute to Armenia. We're a small nation, but full of legacy, and we don't forget our gratitude. And it's time for us to express our gratitude to all who have helped Aurora, but also all who will help their Auroras in order to bring reawakening of humanity, reawakening of conscience of humanity. Because preaching is not enough, practice is going to be very much. And Aurora does both the idea and the action. So I'm very proud to be part of the Aurora founders, Ruben and Nubar, and all the others throughout Russia, Armenia, Georgia, Latin America, Europe, that help Aurora become Aurora and bigger, but more importantly, to play a major role in awakening human conscience. Because values without, Pascal once said, science without conscience is an abyss. And the same thing, power without conscience is an abyss. And Aurora has to promote both moral, ethical, as well as universal values in order to be credible. It brings great credit, in my opinion, to Armenia that Aurora is based in Armenia, but is acting and so forth on behalf of Armenia. Because after all, we are part of humanity. We're a universal nation rather than a parochial nation, as Ruben Nubar mentioned. We've been everywhere. We've suffered everywhere. We've built everywhere. The time has come now also for us to concentrate on Armenia as a strong base, so can give humanity what it owes in gratitude, namely to awaken humanity. Thank you.
Yes, Ruben, please.
And also a few words, just okay. If I may say, also just echoing what Vartan said, I want to say thank you for all the people who've been involved in Avrora humanitarian movement. And I think it's amazing to see the number of people who've been engaged and contribute to this project, like donors, which we all appreciate being part of the supporter and partners to us, the experts, which worked hardly to identify the heroes, the volunteers, thousands of volunteers, young Armenians who've been working with this whole project in Armenia, the team who will work in Avrora team, I want to say thank you. The selection committee members who've been dedicated to this, the laureates and finalists who become friends. And I think it's one thing which I learned, you asked this question, I didn't answer this, but the one man is nothing, one woman is nothing. They're only together we can do something. And I seriously believe this is the best lesson that we can all learn. Stand alone, aloneness is no future. We know it's in 2030 in Europe, 45% will be alone. We have a Edelman agency started a new barometer of aloneness, which means people will stay alone without anyone. I think we are going to go back and build a trust with people who can do something together. Only together we change the world. Only together with building the trust and dream of doing something good, we can really make significant transformation and really make something. That's why I want to say thank you from my side on behalf of the founders, also the people who've been together with us doing it all these years. And I'll say highly appreciate feeling that I'm not alone. And this crisis, by the way, it showed more importantly how staying at home, you feeling you're not alone, because you have friends of thousands of friends in different parts of the world who together continue doing what we have been doing many years already.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Vartan, for this moving and closing remarks. And I would like to thank now our panelists for being with us today on April 24th and for sharing their thoughts and answering the questions of our participants. And of course, I also thank everybody who was watching and listening, and I apologize for some technical problems that were coming up in between. But more importantly, please all stay safe and healthy. Thank you.